Good evening. Welcome to My IVF Answers and the European Fertility Society. We are back once again this week to educate you a little bit, but also provide you with some tips, as today's topic is definitely an intriguing topic. And we are having the best guest and the best presenter to introduce this kind of topic. Professor Alan Thornhill is with us. Hello, Alan. Welcome back. It's great to have you. It's been more than half a year since we had you here, so glad that you are back. I hope you are ready to provide us with some tips. And how are you feeling today?
Yeah, thanks, Caroline. Really good. I'm really looking forward to this webinar. This, as you say, it follows on from the one I gave in December. It's been a little bit updated, so I'm hoping that it'll, for new people, it'll be all new, and even for returning people, there might be some new things for them. So I'm excited to get started.
I'm sure so. It's going to be an interesting session. So as always, please remember that we will start with Alan's presentation and then we will focus on your questions. So as always, if you have any questions, put those in the chat. Alan will definitely take care of those for you right after his presentation. And don't hesitate. This is a fertility coaching webinar, and he will provide you with some useful tips. I'm sure Alan has already over 25 years of experience, so he's the best person to go to. So don't hesitate. I hope that it will be useful for you. I am sure of it, really. And I'm glad that we are back and are able to provide you with this topic today. And I guess we can go ahead with the presentation. Alan, if you're ready, you can share your screen and we can begin.
Okay, perfect. I'm just going to get to the window that we want.
Excellent. We can see it.
Okay, we can see it.
Yeah.
Good.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Caroline.
Let's go.
Well, let's start then. So thank you for the introduction. I'll explain a little bit more about myself in a few minutes, which will give you a better context for why I might be a good person to listen to, speak to, ask questions of. So the topic of today's talk is fertility coaching, tips without tricks. You know, I don't want you to have tricks. I don't want you to be tricked. I want you to have good, solid, honest information. But definitely you can get tips from people who have insider knowledge from the IVF world. And, you know, that's certainly what I've got with my experience. So let's just briefly go over what we're going to talk about. I'm going to give you some bad news and some good news to start with. Say a bit about what fertility coaching is usually. I have a slightly different brand, so maybe that will give you a different kind of perspective on fertility coaching. A little bit about who I am and also why fertility coaching might be something useful for you. So not necessarily with me, just generally. And then actually it's turned into 8 top tips now from the IVF Insider. So I updated that today. There's always more. There can always be more tips, but there's only so much time. So we're just limiting it to 8 today. And then a few resources that might be useful for you. And I think you'll have access to this talk on YouTube afterwards. Feel free to take a screenshot. I always do that if I'm listening to a talk and I really want to get some details down. I just take a picture with my phone and maybe some next steps. So let's start with the bad news. And I am going to apologize for this because this is stuff that people don't really want to tell you when you go through IVF treatment. And it kind of is bad news. Let's not try and sugarcoat it. More than half of all IVF cycles are unsuccessful. Now, there aren't that many clinics that you can go to who say that right off the bat. It's not something people really want to say. They want to be positive. And I want to be positive, and you want to be positive, and you should be positive. But you do need a reality check. You do need to know that, obviously, based on age and other factors, it's more likely to fail than succeed. That's the reality. And once you get that in your mind, it might help you to manage your expectations a little bit better. Let's put it that way. I think everybody on this webinar will know that for women, unfortunately, fertility declines dramatically with age. Let's not put a particular number on it because the statistics are different in different countries, different ethnic groups, but it's got that sort of after 35 type of ring about it. But the reality is, your fertility is declining with age kind of all the time. It just gets more precipitous as you age more. And why that's important is because often people are coming to clinics, a little bit later in life when maybe they've had a career, they've been doing other things. And I wouldn't say it's always too late, but it's sometimes at the later stage. Certainly with egg freezing, I'm always going off on tangents, so I apologize, but not really apologize for that. Egg freezing, when we've looked at the statistics of that, social egg freezing, I think the average age is about 38. Well, that's probably a little too late to be freezing your eggs, or let's say it's not the best time to freeze your eggs. Another sort of sad statistic really is that couples are 3 times more likely to break up after failed IVF than other couples. And I know from my own coaching experience that a decent percentage, it's at least 25% for me right now, of couples that I've worked with I've contacted them after a few months and they've said, we've decided to go our separate ways. And it probably has turned out to be the best thing for them. But that's in hindsight, right? That's what people don't go into these things wanting to break up. So I think there's a lot of work to be done on that to make sure you can keep your relationship intact if you're in a relationship. Another thing that probably is very familiar to you by now, especially if you're going through treatment, is IVF can be very expensive. And given that most people need several cycles or more than one cycle, which links to the first point above, then it is going to get very expensive. So it's probably not a particularly good idea to go into an IVF treatment pathway thinking, well, this will probably work first time. It'd be fantastic if it does, but that's probably not the most sensible way to approach it. And this might seem a little odd to put this in here, but I think this is really important. Clinics are getting busier. IVF is increasing worldwide. I have a global position with the company I work for at the moment, so I get to see what's happening in all different countries. And I don't want to focus just on the UK because I'm based in the UK, but it's certainly true of the UK that reimbursement and opportunities for people to access treatment are getting better and better. So that means that more and more cycles are being done. Also, a lot of clinics are being owned by investors. So they're being run in a slightly different way, which for you as a patient, there are some benefits, but there might also be some downsides. And that's something where perhaps with the coaching or the insider knowledge that can help you to sort of navigate that a little better. And I should say the reason why busy isn't always good. You might sort of assume that it's not always good, but some of the things where you get more personalized care or people speak to you more, those things are sometimes the first things to disappear when you're busy. I've got a friend who worked for a very large, busy IVF clinic in San Francisco in California. And he was working there for nearly 20 years. Eventually he left and he said the first thing they got rid of is us speaking to patients, the embryologist speaking to patients. And that's a very valuable thing for patients. And I think the embryologists love doing it too, because they needed to get more treatment cycles or more activities done during the day with the same number of people. So that's how a busy clinic can sometimes work slightly against you. But there is good news. Let's not say it's all bad news. It certainly isn't. There's lots of good news. Success rates are improving and there are more treatment options. In other words, there are more new things to try when things don't work out. I'm speaking specifically about the UK here, but this is true of some other countries as well. Having a regulator does keep clinics honest. There's things that you can't get away with in the UK. You can't make claims that are baseless because you get inspected. So that can definitely work for you as a patient. And this is true from my experience. I can't say this for every single person, but most clinic staff that I've ever met and worked with, they really do want the best for patients. I know things don't always work out well, but most of the time, most people are rooting for you. That's the truth of the matter. Things do go wrong, and we're going to talk about how to kind of react to that and get the most or the silver lining from that cloud. But the truth is, most people want it to work for you. They're really rooting for you. They're really trying to do their best. And I'm not defending them. I'm just saying that as a fact. Funding and financing is now available. I know it's sometimes quite tricky in the UK, but there is more reimbursement globally, and there are more finance options, which certainly make it more accessible to more people. There's also more focus on patient well-being, and I think when IVF first started, I'm not saying there weren't compassionate people providing the care, but I don't think there was so much focus on the well-being of the person going through treatment. I think it was quite mechanical process. It was very much like, we need to mix the eggs with the sperm, we need to get an embryo, we need to transfer the embryo. It's still that, but I think there's a lot more understanding that we need to focus on the journey of the patient and how they're feeling at all the different steps, because there's lots of tricky steps during that journey, which many of you will already know. And one aspect of that is fertility coaching. So that's one part. There's always been counseling, fertility counseling, which is slightly different, and now there's this fertility coaching. And I think it means a lot of different things to different people, and that's why I've got a slide on it. And this certainly isn't the last word. I don't think I could make a simple definition of what fertility coaching is, partly because there are so many different coaches offering such different things. One sort of simple definition is supporting people on their journey to becoming parents. So it isn't necessarily just IVF. It's about going through some sort of fertility journey, which could include IVF treatment. And as I've said, there are many different styles of coaching and types of coaches. To give you a few examples, I mean, I'm a clinical embryologist, a scientist with many years of experience from working in the lab and running labs. But there are also patients who've been through treatment who offer their services as coaches, and they will offer a different type of service, I would suggest, because they have a different experience. It's not a lesser experience, it's just a different experience. And for some of you, that might resonate well with you. And for some of you, having a nurse or an embryologist or somebody else, that might work better for you. And that's the point. Everybody's different and they have different needs, and you can find different people to suit your needs. And I'll give you some examples of some of the things that most coaches cover. So most coaches cover all of these things: nutrition, emotional support, lifestyle, mindset, stress, good habits, natural methods. I'm sure you've read up about these things, you've heard about these things. And one of the things I want to say, absolutely from the outset, is those things are all really important. They're just not the things that I focus on. And I've spoken to my clients and they've said, I mean, this is a direct quote. I had a couple, or the man from the couple said, Alan, I don't want you to talk to me about stress. I know about stress. I want you to tell me what happens inside a clinic. So they're looking for different things from different people. So, I'm not saying I can't give any advice on these things, but that's not the place where I kind of operate in. I operate in a slightly different place, and that's what I'm going to share with you more today. I can find you loads of resources for all of these things, but they're not things that that's not my main expertise. So who am I? I got a nice introduction from Caroline at the beginning, but I'll just flesh it out a little bit. I'm a registered clinical scientist specializing in embryology. It's a while since I've actually worked in the embryology laboratory, and I went up through the sort of management phases, and then I've moved into a supporting industry. So I've had lots of different roles within the IVF world, let's say. More than 25 years experience, lots of publications. And the reason that I say that is I don't live in the academic world. I live in the real world. I want to help people with real problems, with real solutions, not just, oh, here's a paper that says this. But what that means is I've had to develop a sort of critical mind, a critical thought process to ask questions of what other people might believe to be facts. That's the value of that. I've had all these different roles: clinical, commercial, academic, regulatory. I've even worked for the UK's regulator, the HVA. So I've kind of been on both sides of the fence, the providing treatment and regulating treatment. Global perspective, because I've had lots of global and pan-European roles. And I've been involved in the fertility journeys of literally thousands of patients. Now, that doesn't mean I've been involved in every single aspect of it, but I've been part of that. I've touched it, or I've seen something about it, or I've had an opinion on it, or I've directly influenced it. So that's the kind of breadth of experience. So there's not too many things that I haven't seen. It doesn't mean I've got the right answer to everything. My approach is a bit like that old advertisement that used to be on TV. I know a man or I know a woman who does. If you ask me a question, I don't know the answer, I'll be completely clear with you and say, okay, I understand the question. Now let's go and find the answer somewhere else, because I'm not going to pretend to you that I've got all the answers. And as you will see later on in the talk, I want you to hone this kind of tool to smell out and to sniff out when you think, oh, I'm not sure I trust that answer. Okay. I want you to be confident about the answer you're given when you ask a professional to help you. And now I'm starting to offer coaching to patients because I feel like I should, give back. I should be more directly involved with patients than I do in my everyday role. But why work with a fertility coach at all? And again, I said not me specifically, just any fertility coach. Well, they provide an independent sounding board and advice, because they should know the ins and outs of how an IVF clinic works and the various things that you're going to experience along the way. And independence is quite key here. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with people who work in clinics, but it's obviously a little bit of a conflict of interest if somebody who works in a clinic, you sort of complain to them and they say, well, I have to say nice things about the clinic. I don't say bad things about clinics, but I certainly give a kind of no nonsense view of what I hear, whether I think it's good care or bad care or questionable care, and try and teach you to have that same viewpoint, or way of assessing a clinic and your treatment. It's insider knowledge. I've been inside the clinic, so I know what happens. I know the way to kind of navigate some of the tricky things, some of the difficult things. But it is an external perspective. I'm not in your journey with you. I'm supporting you. That's what a coach does. They support you along the way, but they're not part of it. And that external perspective is really important because, family, friends, partner, they've all got what you call skin in the game. And that's good. That means they're invested, but it also means maybe they have a different agenda than what perhaps you do. Whereas my only agenda is to try and get you to the place you want to be. And that means helping in setting boundaries. And we're going to talk a little bit about boundaries later on, and making decisions. And, it's not about making the decision for you. It's about helping you arrive at the decision that you're comfortable with. And I would say most of what I do is related to that. But there's also an opportunity to save money. And I'm going to give you an example a little bit later on, because I think that's important. Otherwise, this just looks like another thing that IVF patients have to kind of get involved with. It's just more drain on resources. But I want to show you that actually working with somebody who's got your back and empowers you can actually save you money or stop you from wasting money, let's say. And that word empowerment is really key. That's another quotation from a couple I've worked with. They say, what you do is empower us. You empower us to not just accept everything we're told. You empower us to ask questions when we probably wouldn't have before. You empower us to say no if we feel like somebody's crossing a line, a red line that we have established as, I won't do this type of treatment. I won't take this type of medication. That's the empowerment piece. And so it's very important that you've heard that old saying, I'm not giving fish, I'm teaching you how to fish. That's what I want to do, is teach you how to fish in the IVF world. And perhaps regaining a little bit of control. Many patients who go through the fertility journey talk about losing control because, they, in effect, they don't have control over that fundamental natural thing in having a child, and they have to cede that control to other people. But by being empowered, you get an opportunity to regain not all of the control, but some of it. And I think that's very useful and powerful. And I should just finish that bit about why use a coach. I used to think that the only time people would probably need a coach is when they failed, when the cycle has failed, or something's not gone quite right, or they're very disappointed, or they're a little bit stuck. But actually, more and more people I speak to, I'm seeing that this wouldn't be a bad thing to do right at the beginning, because I find a lot of people have kind of gone in a strange direction because they didn't know much to begin with. And perhaps they could have benefited from having some help at the start. But it's always difficult to do that when you don't know what you don't know, right? So let's start with the tips. Well, number one is, talking about IVF 101. What do I need to know? And it does pay to do some homework. I'm afraid it wouldn't be really right of me to say, just put yourself in the hands of the professionals. They'll take care of everything. It helps if you understand what's going on. And obviously you don't have to become a complete expert, but you do need to know the basics. And that's what I mean by 101. You need to learn the IVF language. That's the reality. And I'm sure most of you are doing that or already have done that. But it's critical to, following what advice you're being given and being able to judge that advice and question whether you think that's right for you. And I'm not talking about playing doctor and questioning every single thing that the doctor or the nurse or the professional says to you. I'm just, learning to hone that detector that we all have that says this doesn't seem quite right based on what I do know. But keep it simple. Like I said, you don't need to be an expert, but you do need to know the sort of basics. And try and avoid, the sort of sales agenda, because there is a sales agenda. This is an industry. That's the reality. It doesn't mean that people don't care. It doesn't mean that people don't want the best for you, as I've already said. But it is a business. It's become a business. And that means there is sometimes a sales agenda. So you've got to be prepared for that and be able to see through that. And that's why I've put, a couple of sort of trusted sites, if you like. It doesn't mean everything they say is the absolute last word. It just means that you can be pretty confident that there isn't a sales agenda at the NHS in the UK. You can be pretty confident there isn't a sales agenda at Mayo Clinic in the US, because it's a very trusted brand. And I've worked there, and I remember writing patient information, and it went through so many different versions and iterations to make sure it was not only understandable, but it was balanced. And I think the key word here is balanced information. But you will expect to see, most of the information you read, even if there's lots of differences, 90% of it will be the same, because the basics are basically the same. And that's the bit that I want you to learn, is the 90% that's the same. So number 2, and this one comes up a lot with my clients, is how to ask questions, say no, and I've put inverted commas complain, because I don't think any of us want to be thought of as people who complain. But when you're dissatisfied, I think the response to dissatisfaction is to complain. But as I'm going to show you, there are sort of different ways to complain, and we can call it complain, and you can use different words when you approach the care provider or the clinic. One thing you really have to remember, though, and I apologize if this sounds like I'm sort of, telling you something you already know, but I often have to say this to my clients. You have rights, and you are mostly signing the checks. If you're getting treatment on the NHS, or you're getting it free from the state in whatever country, I know it doesn't feel quite the same, but you do have rights. They're not doing you a favor. You are paying for this treatment, whether that's through taxes or through your own money out of your pocket, and you have rights, and you have the opportunity to question what is being done if you're not happy. But I would say be clear, concise, and precise. So it's easy to get emotional and get into a little bit of a rant when you're unhappy, and I understand that, but try and pull back from that and work with somebody external, either a coach or somebody, family, friends, and try and get a kind of more objective viewpoint. If you make your critique, your complaint, your observation clear, concise, and precise, it will be easier for the clinic or the doctor or whoever to respond to it. And I can give you some examples of how I've helped with that. And that little sort of quill icon is for me to tell you a story. That's what that reminds me to do. Be persistent. I don't mean ring them every 5 minutes, but don't give up when you feel you have a case. Don't give up, but put it in writing. So if you call and that's all you do, it's very easy for the other side to say, well, that's not quite how I remember it. So put it in writing. It doesn't need to be a lawyer letter. It just needs to be, this is what I said. This is the date I said it. I'm sorry to, have to remind you to do it that way, but that's probably your best chance of getting a good response and perhaps some compensation. You can always go with a friend or family member. So you've got, let's say a witness, but also someone who's potentially not emotionally engaged and can respond to particular things that are happening in a different way. All clinics have a complaints process, particularly in the UK. It's a requirement, but try to resolve issues amicably at first. I'm not defending the clinics here. I am on your side, being independent. But from having worked in a clinic, when something goes to a complaint, it sort of takes on a different flavor straight away. Things are dealt with in a different way from that point. So if you can, get your point across without having to do a formal complaint, then you might get it resolved quicker and more in your favor. I'm not saying that if it deserves a complaint, don't complain. Absolutely complain. But see if you can get what you actually want and ask yourself that question. What do I want from this? Do I want a refund? Do I want a goodwill gesture? Do I want just to be heard? Do I want to protect people in the future from some bad thing that's happened? Ask yourself, because I think that will probably define how you create your complaint in inverted commas. And my story there is I worked with a patient who, in 2 different ways. One way, she was unhappy about a decision that a doctor made. And I said, I'm not going to overturn that decision. That's not my role. But what exactly are you unhappy about? And we talked it through, and we came up with a plan for her to write a letter to a member of support staff at the clinic. And lots of toing and froing, but eventually that letter got sent and she got the resolution she wanted. So that was good. And it was by supporting her in the kind of tone of the letter. In a completely separate situation, but with the same patient, I agreed with her that I didn't think the outcome from a particular cycle was particularly good. It looked unusually bad. But I said, things happen, and she accepted that. She said, I know things happen. Somebody's got to be the bad statistic. And I said, yes, that's true, but I don't think, I think you should question what happened a little bit more than we just accept that it's just that sometimes bad things happen. In other words, get some answers to some sensible questions. So we worked on the sensible questions. She got some answers, which was good. And I thought the answers were actually very reasonable after initially a bit of a fob off kind of letter that she received. And then eventually she got a goodwill gesture of some money off the next treatment and was very happy with that. So that's what I meant about that's one way to save money. And be friendly and firm. I mean, stay friendly, because I think we all know that in life we usually get the best results by being friendly. But you do have to be firm. People have to know exactly what you think about what's happened and what you're expecting to happen as a response, whether that's information, a goodwill gesture, or whatever it is. But you do need to be the squeaky wheel. Be persistent. It's easy to get forgotten or lost in a center that's doing 1,000 cycles a year. So top tip number 3 is about choosing the right clinic and treatment for you. Now, I've got an article out. There are lots of articles around, so you don't have to just read my one, but I've written an article for Fertility Road. I've put the link there. And it's about choosing the right clinic for you, not the best clinic, because the so-called best clinic might not be the right one for you. I think you need to try and use trusted resources to try and work out what that right clinic for you might be. And, in different countries, there are, for example, let's use the UK as an example. The HFEA, the regulator, has a list of all the clinics. They're licensed clinics. It's the law to license the clinic. So we're actually in a very fortunate position where all of the clinics that exist that offer IVF treatment are all listed there for you, and where they are and what treatments they offer, what success rates they've had. And those are all validated, verified bits of information. Other countries I visit around the world, literally the only information you have about the success rates is what's put on a big sticker on the wall, which, I don't necessarily believe it. And I'm an expert in the field. I look at it and think, well, it's easy to put that number up, isn't it? Whereas if somebody's actually come in and inspected your clinic and you've had to submit your data to a regulator, and the chance of keeping your license is predicated on those numbers being accurate or truthful, then that means it's a much more trusted resource. So keep that in mind. How trusted is this resource for me? And that would also apply to things like review sites, Trustpilot and all those sort of things. Use the same filter that you use when you choose a restaurant or a hotel. If it has 2 reviews and they're both excellent, that's great. But do you really trust 2 reviews? Is that enough? If it's got thousands of reviews and there's some that are terrible, well, there's always going to be some unhappy people out of thousands of people. So you can use a very similar filter that you would use for restaurants and hotels. Is it going to be UK or overseas? Now, no time to get into this, but there's reasons why you might go overseas. Sometimes it's cost, sometimes it's availability of certain treatments that aren't available in the UK. And so you can expand this comment about where to get treatment just to mean keep an open mind, but consider not just costs and accessibility and potential difficulty of traveling, but also, are there different legal frameworks in place in that country if you go overseas? And that might make a difference to you. Example, if you want to use donor eggs or sperm in this country, then it can't be anonymous. But in some countries it can be. And for some of you, that might be a good thing. And some of you, that might be a terrible thing. So that's why you have to think a little bit broader than just, is it overseas and what's the price? I talked about, the TripAdvisor, the review type sites, and it would be great to have more independent type of review sites that have been properly validated for patients, because I think it's still a little bit thin on the ground. I think you also need to, and this will be the subject of another article and perhaps webinar, you need to be able to understand results well. And the reason, very simply put, these are all opportunities to not compare apples with apples. So for example, at one clinic, if they say to you, our pregnancy rate is 69%, and another clinic, they say it's 52%, it'll be very easy for you to say, oh, well, the 69% is obviously the better one. And at one level, I would agree with you. At another level, I would say, well, we need to know what statistically whether that's different. That's one thing. What are the numbers that lead to those statistics? But also, are we talking about the same thing? So in one clinic, they might be saying pregnancy rate, meaning a pregnancy test per embryo transfer. In another clinic, they might mean a clinical pregnancy per cycle started. So, what's on top of that equation and what's below that equation are really significant in that sense. So just saying pregnancy rate is not enough. You need more detail than that. And compliance. And the reason I mention compliance is, again, a positive, a benefit of if you get treated in the UK with the regulator being in place, is there's an opportunity to look at inspection reports of the clinic you might attend. And some of them can be pretty bland and, not say anything particularly interesting. Just it looks like everything's fine, which is obviously good news. But I suppose I'm more interested in you having access to reports that say things aren't all as they should be. This clinic's working on these problems, not because it can't deliver treatment, but maybe that's something you want to consider. So it's very rare for a clinic to be closed down or lose its license in the UK. I mean, extremely rare. But it's not rare for a clinic to have problems. And those problems are visible in the compliance and the inspection reports. And those things are publicly available. Not that easy to access, but they are publicly available. And then the final thing I would say is try before you buy. Lots of clinics now offer visits and free virtual consults. And the reason I say that's important, I mean, obviously that is a marketing tool for them. But, if this is going to be a very, challenging journey for you, and it would be better to do that journey in a clinic where you already know the people, you already feel a good vibe, let's say. So I think take those opportunities where they come. Number 4, where should I get my trusted factual information? Where should I get my information? Now, I sometimes get in trouble on this slide, so I want to make it very, very clear. I'm not criticizing anybody. Friends and family are a great source of comfort and support. And some of them do have good information, but and of course they will expect you to listen to them when they want to share advice, decision-making, information, all of that stuff. But the chances of it being trusted and factual are probably slim. So just bear that in mind. Another one, and this one I do want to kind of be absolutely clear that I'm not criticizing bulletin boards or communities, online communities, not at all. They provide a fantastic service in terms of supporting people and helping to lead towards information. But I have to say, if you've got hundreds of pages of information and you're trying to find the essential facts, that could be quite challenging. So all I'm saying is use the particular sites on the internet for what they're designed for. So really what you want is a place where you can find trusted, factual information. And you might think, well, that's just going to Google. Well, it is, but you have to be very careful with Dr. Google, as we all know. And I'll give you an example why. So last year for this talk, and for my sort of coaching clients generally, I wanted to do a Google search of something very, very basic and see what results I got on different occasions. Because as you probably know, Google and search engines work in a very organic way. They sort of change, they're dynamic. So what you search for today may not look like what you search for in a month or a year, or it might not even be the same when you search tomorrow. And the search I did was I said, best IVF clinic, London. That's it. That's what I put. Because I thought that's something that patients might want to know. And what did I get? The first time I did it, May 22, I got the London Acupuncture Clinic. And none of what I'm going to say is about criticizing any of these websites, not at all. This is all about search engine optimization. But I'm 100% positive that the London Acupuncture Clinic does not offer IVF. So that is not a good return on your search investment to ask the question, best IVF clinic London, and get the acupuncture clinic, because that's just going to take you on a wild goose chase, take you down a rabbit hole, and just give you potentially confusing information. The second time I did it was in November. And I got the Lister Clinic in Chelsea. Well, that's great, because that is a fertility clinic. Is it the best one? Not for me to say, but at least you're getting closer to what you're looking for. And of course, using Google is all about how specific you are in your searches. Too specific and you don't get much. Too vague and you get too much. So I'm just trying to really make a point here. Then I did it again, not long after, 8th of December, and now I get London Doctors Clinic. Again, that's not an IVF clinic. It might refer to IVF clinics, but it's not an IVF clinic. So be careful what you search for is my main thing. And, a trusted source of information, at least for finding clinics, as I've said, would be the HPA website. At least it's a starting point. So I think everything that I've said so far is kind of leading up to this. Tip number 5, tuning your BS detector. Okay, so I'm going to be good and not curse in this lecture. But I want you to be skeptical. Okay, even of the stuff I'm saying, I want you to be skeptical. I'm not afraid to be challenged and ask questions. And nobody who provides your treatment should be afraid to be challenged. If they are, your detector should be, so the needle should be sort of bashing against the side, and the alarm bell should be ringing, and the red light should be flashing. Okay. And I've got these sort of little sub tips, if you like. And one is like the sense check. When something just doesn't sound sensible, it may not be. Now, I know we're all ignorant about various things. So sometimes just our ignorance means we get an answer and we go, oh, I'm not sure that's correct. But you can sense check it by checking in different places or asking people. And if enough people say, oh, that doesn't sound right, it probably isn't right. Another one, in a clinic, when you're asking a question and you're met with silence, to me, that's a bad thing. And, I've never been an IVF patient, but I have been a patient. And when I get silence, and I think I use the same kind of filter that I would suggest to my clients. When I get silence, I think, if you don't know the answer, just say you don't know the answer. I'm happier with that response. Contradicting information. I've got a little story for this. I was working with a client who said, to cut a long story short, they said they needed ICSI, which is the sperm injection technique. And again, I don't want to second guess the embryologist, the clinic, the doctor. It's not about second guessing. I don't know better because I don't have the information. And some of you I don't have all the information. Some of you might ask me specific clinical questions today, and I'm going to say, I can't give you the answer because I don't have access to all the information. And it would be wrong for me to do that. It's about helping you to get to the right set of questions. So in this situation, I just said, just out of interest, why are you having ICSI? And the man said to me, because I've got borderline motility. And I said, well, as far as I know, that's not a strong reason for ICSI, but I'm sure they gave you more information than that. And then he said, well, no, the doctor said the success rate with ICSI is 70% fertilization, and with conventional IVF, it's 40%. And I said, well, straight away, that is not true. That's factually incorrect. So I'm unhappy with the fact you've been told that. I said, what I want you to do is go back and say, is that a fact? Is that in your clinic? And ask a series of questions, you see. So I wasn't saying they're wrong, you should go and complain. It was go and ask more questions. The other thing is I did a little bit of searching myself. I looked up the patient information sheet from that clinic, and it didn't say that at all. It said they're roughly the same, or maybe 70% to 65%. The point of this story is not what percentage it is. It's the fact that these pieces of information were so contradictory. Eventually, the doctor said, I just think it works better. And I said to the couple, that's the most honest thing that doctor said. I wish they'd just said that at the beginning. Not that that's particularly valid, but it makes a lot more sense than giving information that just contradicts itself every time you get an extra layer of information. So watch out for contradicting information. Body language. If you're there with the person, either on Skype or Zoom or in the clinic, you can tell when somebody's shifty and doesn't really want to answer your question. And you should have a nose for that, because you have it in all the other parts of your life. and you have a right to do this with IVF treatment too. Which is similar to gut instinct, right? When you just think, I don't feel this is right, or I don't trust this person. And honestly, if you don't trust the person, don't get treated there, because I think you're just setting yourself up for a world of pain. Because if you don't trust the people who are treating you, I don't think it's going to go well. I mean, if you're lucky, it will go well. But if it doesn't go well, you're just going to think that lots of bad things have happened along the way, lots of mistakes have been made along the way. And then, I mean, some things in life are free, but not many. Okay, so not many things are free. And when they say included in the cost, usually it means the cost is higher. So just be aware of those things. I've had patients say to me, oh, Clinic X is the cheapest in the country. And I go, it absolutely is not the cheapest in the country. It's just that the headline price is the lowest, or one of the lowest in the country, but you will never leave that clinic without spending a significant amount more. So just be wary of those, what's free, what's included, what's really the price. Because when things appear to be too good to be true, they usually are too good to be true. A little bit about financing and understanding costs. As I've said, if you're planning, you probably need to plan for more than one cycle, because that's the reality, that's the average that you're going to have to do. I was going to try and give a number here, but it's very difficult to say how many cycles are needed to get a baby. And it differs with age and other factors. So it's not that useful. But just to say more than one is probably important. I think I met somebody a year or so ago who said in their previous life, they were a financial planner. And they said it's become very useful in the industry they were working in, which is associated with IVF. And I thought, yeah, that's interesting. I've never thought of it like that. So I'm not talking about someone who provides the financing. I'm talking about someone who says, this is going to be a significant investment for you. Let's think about how you can, plan for this. This is something, particularly in the UK, that's absolutely essential. So it's not even a question of this will be a nice to have. This is you should get this in the UK, but I'm pretty sure you should get this in every clinic anywhere in the world, or you should insist on it, which is a costed treatment plan. And what this basically means is, after they've had an idea about what sort of IVF cycle you're likely to go through, they can make an estimate based on all the information they have to say, well, look, it's likely to cost you from X to Y, pounds, dollars, euros, whatever. If they can't do that, it sort of shows they don't really have a very good grasp of what they're doing, as far as I'm concerned. Now, I realize that a range means there's a minimum and a maximum, and that could be quite a wide range. But that's better than thinking it's the headline price and then coming out, paying 10 times as much. And that does happen. That's the reality. It does happen. So basic IVF headline price versus fully loaded with lots of other things, medications, the so-called add-ons, not all of which are useless. I think some of them are very useful. That's another talk. But certainly knowing what things are likely to happen in your cycle. Even ICSI is usually not included in the price. So, those are all things you need to know in advance. Pursue NHS funding or state funding, depending on what country you're in, if you're eligible. So definitely seek out the eligibility, because that's certainly worth doing if you can get free one or more cycles on the NHS. And I know that might sound obvious, but we're always saying how little the NHS funds IVF, but that doesn't mean it funds none. So that means some people are getting that funding, and why shouldn't it be you? Consider multi-cycle packages and money-back plans. And one of the reasons I say to clients that this might be useful is because they've been worked out by clever accountants and actuarial people who basically say, we'll give you all your money back if you don't succeed, which is almost an indication that they think you're a good prospect. So, I think you can use that to your advantage if you're lucky enough to be offered one of those packages, but also exactly what you're going to spend. So I'm not sort of endorsing them. I'm just saying it's something to certainly consider and think through. Always query add-ons. As I said, it's not because I don't believe that some of them work, but it shouldn't be just like a restaurant menu where you just get told you're having all these extra things. You should at least be able to say, why will this help me? Why will this particular thing help me? And the other one is the tip that not everybody knows is buy medications from a pharmacy. I know that's becoming much more common now, but in the days when I was in the clinic, you were much, much better off to get drugs from a pharmacy than to buy them directly from the clinic. So we're getting close to the end now. Number 7, this is the new one I've added, is setting personal boundaries, because I've been working on an article for Fertility Road for this. It's not out yet, but please keep an eye out for it. This was very interesting because when I spoke to a client the other day about it, said I was writing the article, and she gave me some good information for it. She was saying, "Oh, I don't know what you mean." And then when we talked about it, she said, "Oh yeah, I know exactly what you mean." But neither of us had thought of it in those terms before. So some types of boundaries are physical. One example might be, how many cycles of treatment you're prepared to do, what particular types of treatment you're prepared to accept. Financial boundaries, am I prepared to do 3 cycles because I know I've got money to do that, and then no more? I'm not going to sell my house. I'm not going to do something else. Ethical boundaries, what am I, do I want anonymous egg donation, or would I be happy with non-anonymous, and vice versa? Communication, who you're going to tell, who you're not going to tell. Are you going to tell anybody? Does work know? Use of social media, am I going to post things? Am I going to post some things? Am I going to attend certain events like baby showers and stuff, or am I not going to? These are all examples of boundaries. And you need to establish them. And I would say, based on people I've spoken to, that you want to establish them really as early as possible. One way to do that is to do like a self-audit. So you could say something like the social media boundary, for example. You could say, how much do I even think about that? Does it bother me? 1 being I'm extremely uncomfortable, 10 being I'm super comfortable with that. And if you score lower than 5, you could say, you can make your own scale. Score lower than 5, this is a problem. I think I need to set a boundary for social media. I think it's going to be, I'm not going to do anything while I'm going through treatment, or whatever it's going to be. But you get the point. That's how you might self-audit to establish a boundary. Clearly communicate that boundary to friends, family, clinic, depending on what it is. Obviously, if it's to do with treatment, it's most likely to be the clinic you're speaking to. But be very clear about that communication, and use the same principles that I said earlier about being concise and precise. So nobody's under any illusions or doubt about what you want, need, or expect. Maintain the boundaries. There's not much point establishing them if you're not going to stick to them. However, and you can do that by looking after yourself, self-care, and seeking support. In many countries, UK included, fertility counselling is actually it's free to a point, and it's part of the IVF cycle. Take advantage of that. People are often funny about counselling. I mean, particularly men I've spoken to, oh, I don't need to see a counsellor and so on. And I get that. But this is about, it's not about getting inside your head. It's about kind of working through issues with you to try and establish those boundaries and be happy with them. And the 2 last things I would say is, it's never too late to set a boundary, even if you hadn't already done that. And I talked about maintaining it. You should be firm with your boundary, but be flexible. And a good example the other day, speaking to a client, and she said, I had a boundary for finance, which was I'm not going to do another cycle. And then she said, but, I found some money. The drive was so great to want to do this that I've changed my boundary. So the environment changed for her, and she changed her boundary, and that's okay. But it was about setting it up in the first place that was important. And then final one, keeping your relationship on track. It's really important, and I'm sad to say that some of the people I've worked with who are no longer together, I wonder whether some of this was to do with alignment, that they weren't really on the same page about what they wanted. So communicate that, what you actually want. I think it's better in the long run to be clear up front about what you both want, individually and together. Communication is key throughout. Boundaries are important. They're not just about for the person going through the treatment. The person supporting will have boundaries as well about what they can say, what they shouldn't say, who they can speak to, all of that stuff. It's important to understand the process, particularly if you're the supporting partner, because if you don't understand, you're not going to know what they're going through. And I've spoken to couples before where the man said, oh, that was really stressful, that last cycle. And I said, well, how? And the lady kind of, I wouldn't say laughed, kind of scoffed and said, well, what did you experience in that cycle? You didn't go through the same thing as me. And I kind of intervened and just sort of said, look, you will never have experienced the hormonal changes that are part of a cycle, just to name one thing. But you know what it's like when you feel very aggressive. That's a surge of adrenaline and testosterone going through your body. Imagine that, but it not being under your control because you're on medication. And that was some way towards trying to understand the process. Support each other. which is linked to that the maintaining boundaries, self-help, seeking professional help if you need it. And finally, particularly again for the supporting part, engaging with the process. I heard a story about a woman whose IVF treatment was delayed for months because the man hadn't yet done a semen analysis. And all he had to do was provide a semen sample. That was it. Now, I'm not saying for someone that's not difficult. I'm just saying I don't think it was difficult for that particular man. He just didn't realize the significance of having to do that, which would slow down the whole process if he didn't do it on time. And to me, that's just a lack of engagement and not realizing that actually his part in the process was very significant, even though it was small. So that's the end of the talk. I know I've gone fairly long. I hope that's been useful, and I'm sure there'll be some questions. Here's a few examples of resources. It's not exhaustive for obvious reasons. Particularly nice one on the setting personal boundaries from a US clinic. What was interesting about setting boundaries was there's hardly any resources that I could find about setting boundaries for IVF, which I was a bit surprised about. So next steps, well, whatever you do on your journey, I mean, maybe consider a coach, and I'm available, but there are many other coaches available too. And I offer a free 45-minute, and it is free, no obligation, fertility coaching session, just to kind of explore, what might be the hot button, the most difficult thing you're going through right now. There's my email address if you want to contact me. But as I said, I would do some research of your own. Look for somebody that would resonate with you if that's something you need. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much indeed, Alan. That was really thorough. And again, it was really interesting and useful, I am sure. And now it's time for your questions. There are some questions ready. I've already seen them. And of course, if there's more, you know what to do. Go ahead, type those in. Alan is right here for you to help you out. And I believe those tips he provided already are useful. But of course, we can still explore some more topics, I'm sure, as well. So let's see. The first question we have is, so what is your advice on assessing outcome statistics for supplements?
Okay, and if you mean by supplements, like nutritional supplements, I think the data on those, I don't think they're bad. I just think the data on those is not as clear as it could be. So most of the things I've read about, it's very difficult to get very clear statistics on the value of supplements. And I think, so that's one thing I would say. The second would be, one thing I would definitely kind of reinforce, because this is particularly true of some men I've spoken to, is supplements are not additive. So if a supplement has got some potential benefit for a particular person, like it improves sperm quality or something like that, taking more and more and more of them does not increase the quality more and more. In fact, it could do the opposite. So it's about that balance in life. If you take too much of something, it can actually have a different effect. So that's one of the things I would say about supplements. The main thing, though, is it's pretty hard to find really strong evidence that a given supplement is improving a particular outcome or particular parameter of fertility treatment more than just having good exercise, good diet, or having been diagnosed with a deficiency and then having to make up for that deficiency with a supplement. So I'm sorry that if that's not the answer you sort of wanted to hear, but that's, based on my knowledge and experience, I would say that's a fair answer.
Perfect. Thank you so much indeed. And if there are any follow-ups, you know what to do. Thanks, Alan, for your input here. And how about this question? So is IVF policies such as Gaia a good idea?
You might need to, I don't know what you mean by IVF policy there. So if you want to rephrase that question, that might be helpful.
Yeah,
and we'll move
sure.
on to the next one.
Exactly. We will go to the next one. So please just let us know what you mean exactly by this, and we will go back to this one. And let's see. Would like to know, so how do you stay up to date with the latest developments and research in fertility treatments to provide the most relevant and informed coaching to your clients?
Okay. Well, I hope I'm being modest when I say this. I said to you right at the beginning, I don't have all the answers to everything, but I'm good at finding answers. But what I would say, so here's the bit that might sound immodest, is I work in I work in the fertility industry. Okay, I'm not just a coach. Not that there's anything wrong with being just a coach. I'm working in an industry that is allied to IVF. Is a lot of research involved. I'm not in the R&D team. I'm not in the research and development team, but I work very closely with them. And part of my job right now is to keep up to date with all the latest fertility advances. There will always be some that I don't know about. I mean, I spoke to a client a while ago and he said, oh, there's some UV box that you can, that you can sit under and it improves your sperm. And I said, I've never heard of that. I'll look it up, but like I said, with my kind of scientific background, I'll ask the right questions. And if I work with you, I'll get you to ask the right questions too. That's the point. I can't know everything. Nobody can know everything. It's about finding the answers and sniffing them out and saying, is this really likely to be true? I'd love it to be true, but it probably isn't. So that's how I keep up to date, is by, I'm in an industry that has all that information, and then I keep my ear to the ground all the time.
All right, that sounds great. Thank you so much. I hope that helped. I believe so, of course. So what do you offer in terms of service, and what is your fee structure? Sorry, very direct.
No, that very direct is fine. I think the best thing to do, because that is part of the structure, is to have a free call, and then we can talk about structure and what's right for you. And it might be that you go, that's not for me. And I've had plenty of clients who said, that was really interesting. Thanks for your time. And if I feel like I need to speak to you in the future, I'll speak to you. And of course, I'm not really expecting them to call back, and that's okay if I've done something. So that's what I would suggest is have that free call. What have you got to lose? 45 minutes of your life is all you've got to lose, and I hope you would get something out of it.
Definitely. Sounds good. Definitely. And we will go back to the previous question regarding the IVF policies. Okay, there is a explanation. So IVF policies such as Gaia, which I understand is IVF insurance, allowing you to only have two if IVF is successful, right?
I think I understand the question
Guarantee.
now. Thank you. Yeah. Because I think there's a clinic called Gaia, and so I just didn't want to sort of go off on a tangent. So there's a number of these different schemes available in the UK and globally, whereby you pay a certain amount of money and you get money back if it's unsuccessful, right? So that's what I think you're saying. I think you have to be really careful. I think you have to go in with your eyes open. But if you've got the money to spend, I think it's not a bad decision. Now, how these companies make their money is by making sure they select the best prognosis patients, the people who are most likely to succeed. And that means the people will succeed sooner than they expected, which means they'll make some extra money. Because obviously, if nobody ever succeeded, they'd just lose money all the time. So I think they're worth looking at, but I think you have to try and kind of map where you are in that system. And if you're good prognosis, then and you haven't got the money, then you're probably better off just taking your chances with spending less and hopefully being successful. If you've got the money, the worst that happens is you're successful and you lose a bit of money. What I mean is you spend more money than you're expecting to. So I think they're all worth looking at, but they're not for everybody.
Sure. All right. And actually, next question is regarding the IVF packages. So what do you think about those packages in comparison to single treatment plans, especially in the light of being able to switch clinics if you have problems?
Well, I think I was sort of covering some of that in the last question, and it's a great question. I think, again, it's one of those things where be sure that you're happy with that clinic. And I know you can't always know that until you've had treatment. And maybe if things don't go well, you're going to say, oh, I wish I could switch now. But that's maybe where you learn how to kind of complain, in inverted commas, if it doesn't go well. But I do think the packages are quite good if you've got the money up front, because they're not completely guaranteeing. There's different ones. Some are money back if you're not successful, and some are partial money back, and some are you get more, essentially a volume discount scheme where you get more for less money or for the same unit money by buying in bulk, so to speak. And I think you have to consider those in the same way as a lot of consumer items. You have to kind of weigh up the pros and cons. But my short answer is consider them and see how it maps onto your particular journey. And if you want to be super flexible, maybe that isn't the best thing to do. But spoke to a client the other day and she said, I'm kicking myself for not doing the package one because the first cycle was a complete blowout. So, but she couldn't have known that in advance.
Yeah.
And maybe she didn't think she had the money to do the package.
Right.
So it really is horses for courses.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much for the explanation. It's not easy for sure to make that decision if whether it's worth it to do it straight away or not. So thanks for explaining this one. And let's see. Next question is here from Daphne. Do you have any experience with spinal cord injury patients? We have struggled to get some issues across due to my partner's injury, even though the clinic was recommended to us by the hospital spinal unit. Anything you can advise?
Okay, well, I mean, this is there are probably lots of specifics there. I can guess some of them. I'm not going to, voice them all, but I think the critical thing here is you probably were expecting the clinic that was recommended to you by the hospital spinal unit to be fully conversant with all of the issues and potential challenges, and maybe you were disappointed with the response you got. I think the thing there is to get second opinions, multiple options, not just the one they said. And it's possible that the clinic they suggested, while it's allied to the spinal injury unit, it might be in the same hospital, might be part of the same trust, they might have actually relatively little recent experience. So what you really want is a clinic that's got lots of recent experience, or at least more recent experience than that particular clinic. And again, maybe before you even go, get a list together of all the particular issues that are going to be, the critical ones for you, and maybe even send them in advance so that there's no time wasting involved. Because I think one of the problems is I call it falling into the IVF funnel. Once you're in the funnel, it's quite hard to climb out again. So once you're in a particular clinic, it feels hard to climb out. So what you want to do is before you get there, kind of know that it's probably the right place to be because everybody's making the right noises and saying the right things. So, for example, with this particular example, if you get a response from, like the senior nurse or a doctor saying, oh, yeah, we do a lot of this, you're probably at the right place. If you get one and you go, oh, let me send that to somebody else before we bring you in as a patient, or you get no response at all, they just say, come in on Tuesday. Oh, that to me is a bit of a red flag. You want a place that feels like it's familiar with your particular sets of issues. I hope that was, helpful to a point.
Brilliant. Thank you so much indeed. And Daphne has one more question. Let's go to that. So why do you think that NHS cutoff for offering treatment is a BMI of 30, but some clinics offer up to 35 or even higher when you self-fund?
Okay. So this is not my judgment. I'm not providing a value judgment for the decision, but my best guess for why that's happened is a way of limiting resources. So there's not unlimited resources to pay for anything, not least IVF. I'm not judging whether that's good or bad. I mean, it's probably bad. And so by changing the BMI cutoff to a lower BMI, essentially that's just finding another filter to treat fewer patients. Now, obviously, particularly with BMI, it might be related to the chances of success are somewhat lower as you increase in BMI. So that would be the kind of rationale for it, the kind of medical rationale. But the reason for it, the kind of, the nuts and bolts reason is to spend less money on patients, essentially.
Okay. Thank you so much. Let's have a look. There are some more questions. I will also put some links in the chat as Tony asked for that, so I will do it in the meantime. But let's have a look. Em would also like to know, so how do you help patients strike a balance between staying informed about fertility options while avoiding information overload and stress? I'm at the point where it feels like I already know what's needed, but struggle to find the confidence that I have what's needed.
Okay, well, I think the confidence thing is always, it takes a while to build up that confidence, and there are always new things happening. So, I mean, don't beat yourself up about not knowing everything and not having all the confidence all the time. What I would say, though, is it's very easy to get distracted. So to use a kind of non-IVF trope, something we all do, we get distracted very easily. Something new comes on TV, on social media. Well, it does in fertility as well. Once you're attuned to fertility stories, you start seeing things where you would never have seen them before. You think, oh, maybe that can help me. Maybe that can help me. I would say try and avoid doing that, because once you've got a pathway planned and you're happy with it, and your your questions have all been answered satisfactorily, it is unlikely that some new thing is going to just pop out of the blue that's going to suddenly be the answer to all your prayers. It is unlikely, all right? So the way, I'm not saying this is the way to avoid information overload, but don't get distracted by other things. When you're on a pathway, there's an element of sticking to that pathway and not getting distracted with lots of new things that, oh, well, I could do this or I could do that. If you're at the right clinic for you, they probably will have said all the best options for you at the outset. And only if you start smelling a rat or feeling really uncomfortable would you say, well, stop. If everything goes according to plan, it should be a very, not a very pleasant experience, a reasonably pleasant experience, and then hopefully with a very good outcome at the end. The worst case scenario is, not getting the outcome you wanted and having a terrible experience. And in my experience, the terrible experience is often because something, kind of untoward happened along the way. Not, it not working is bad. Not trying to soft soap that, but when things don't go right or things aren't communicated properly, or a member of the care team disappears halfway, these things are all super uncomfortable and awkward and shouldn't have happened, and they make things that makes the experience a lot worse. But generally speaking, you don't need to be chasing new things all the time. It's obviously, if you get to the end of a cycle and it's unsuccessful, it's a good time to regroup. And that famous sort of Einstein, or attributed to Einstein, saying the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. I think that sort of holds true. Even if you don't change too much, it's always worth saying, could something different have been done? And get external advice, speak to the clinic. Don't just blindly go forward, but also don't just throw in loads of other things with the hope of them working. They need to be rational and well thought through.
Okay. Thank you so much. Definitely sounds good. Thank you. Indeed. Some more questions are coming up right here. How about this one? So, have you had instances where you had to recommend overseas treatment to your UK client? If so, was it just about the financial aspect or the care?
Okay, I'll give you a very specific example, and this is not, I'm not criticizing UK clinics or the provision of, I'm going to talk specifically about egg donation here, because it's a very easy example to use for your question. There are more options for egg donors in other countries. Okay, there just are. That's a fact. I'm not saying that's good or bad. It's just a fact. So if you want more options and you want to know more about the donor, in some countries, you're going to get it by not being in the UK. In some cases, it is financial. That's definitely true. And another aspect to talk about egg donation as the example. So there's three parts linked just to egg donation. The other one is the rules are different in different countries. So I mentioned it earlier that in the UK, it's been this way for like 20 years, nearly 20 years now, that if you use egg or sperm donors, they're non-anonymous. So at some point, the child born from the donation could find out who they were. In Spain, just to use an example, that's not the case. They're anonymous. Now, for some patients, that's good, and for some patients, that's terrible. And I honestly mean that. I've referred friends to Spain before who, didn't care either way, if you like. It just was the right place for them at the right time. And then I spoke to a client recently who said, "There's no way I'm sending to Spain. No way I'm going to Spain, because I want the child to be able to find out who their biological parent is." So that's an ethical boundary for some people. So it's not just finance. There are different care options, and there are different ethical and legal frameworks which will suit certain people.
Of course, that sounds, again, correct and crystal clear. I just put Alan's email address in the chat, so if anyone would like to get in touch with him, you can use that email. I put those because there is a question how to apply for a free session. So
Email
I guess
me.
they can.
Yeah, there we go.
Exactly.
Email me. Thank
exactly.
You. Yeah.
And you can do that. I just put this email so you can use it. Just looking out. Okay, next question here. Which clinic can you advise for double donation? Anything you can advise?
And what
In Spain?
Specifically, what do you mean? But double, you mean sperm and eggs?
I believe so. Yeah. But...
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd have to.
Yes.
Yeah, I think you can probably do that in Spain, but you're saying clinic. I don't usually give out clinic referrals for obvious reasons. More what I do is help you to find the way to determine who does that, who offers that. And then when I work with clients and they say, I'm going to clinic X, usually my subtle way of saying, I think you might want to think again is to say, have you considered all of the options? That's kind of the way I would say it. But in this case, that's saying, tell me a clinic that would be best for this. And that's not what I do. I don't do that. I don't say, you need to go to this clinic, unless it was the only place in the world that offered that particular treatment type, in which case that would just be a knowledge question. It'd be, the only place that offers double donation is clinic X in country Y. But I think this is more about doing some homework to find out what's possible, and then here's the coaching part, is making sure they've got good experience with that double donation, finding out what their success rates are with that double donation, that it didn't just start last week. It's been something they've been doing for years and they've got good success rates, what the legal framework is. So there is quite a lot to dig into. But if you did that and then said, I was thinking of, this particular clinic, if I thought it was a good bet, I'd say, that sounds like you've made a good choice. That's kind of how I do it.
Okay. Sounds good again. Thank you so much. And Michelle, thank you for your question here. And one more, possibly our final. So if you have more, you know what to do. So do you provide consultation on how to choose a donor?
Okay, so I think it does matter whether you're talking about an egg donor or a sperm donor, but I'll say some generalities anyway. So one thing is that we'll start with the ethical thing. Is it anonymous or non-anonymous? Second thing is, how much do you want to know about the donor? That's another critical thing. Another thing might be, how much do you want to pay, and how much stock of that donor is there? So if it was sperm, for example, is it the last set of samples available, or is there kind of not unlimited supply, but a lot of supply? If it's traveling overseas, or is it importing the eggs or sperm? Is it doing it locally in the UK? You see what I mean? There's lots of different things. So if you're saying, can I do a consultation on that? Yeah, absolutely. I was doing that the other day with somebody, and we were going through all of the red lines. Where are the points where I'm not happy to do this? Where are the points where I won't compromise on this? Like what the educational level of the egg donor is, things like that. Again, not for me to judge whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. What I tend to do there is say, if you're really concerned about the educational level, how much guarantee is there that, the donor has told the truth on the form? Have they got I don't think it matters, but, have they got a PhD, or did they never finish high school? Some people, that's really important. But how much do you necessarily believe it? Did they have to show a certificate? So I just kind of raise these things so that people don't just think it's about picking something from a catalog and being 100% certain that the information is completely accurate. So just to manage expectations. And then the final bit, I've written an article about this, is what will my baby look like if I use egg donation? But the same would be true of sperm donation. And the truth is, read the article, but the truth is, it's pretty hard to predict what a child's going to look like, honestly. So if you choose one and you go, oh, I think this one looks just like me, or it looks exactly like a celebrity, I'm just using that silly example, but there's no guarantee that the child will look like that. There's so many ways for it not to look like that. So these are all factors when people are considering using a donor.
Okay, brilliant. Again, thank you so much for your advice here. And as I mentioned, it looks like that was our final question, but thank you so much, everyone, for your questions. I do believe it was a very informative session, and I can see some comments here that definitely confirm that. Thank you for the very insightful session. Thank yous are coming up your way, Alan. So thanks a lot for joining us today, for sure. Before we finish, as always, is there anything at all you would like to add?
Me?
Yes, of course.
Oh, me. Sorry. Well, thank you so much to the attendees, because I love the questions. I can tell you're engaged. I mean, I'd love to be in front of you and see your faces, because that's how I prefer to speak. But I can tell by your questions that you're really engaged. I really hope it's helped you. That's all I want to do is help, honestly. And so, absolutely feel free to reach out and let's do that free session if anyone wants to do that. And hopefully you'll get, because it'll be more tailored to you specifically, hopefully you'll get something out of that. And there's no obligation to continue, obviously.
Definitely. Sounds good, I think. So thanks a lot, everyone, for joining us again and again. And I do believe it was useful. So I'm glad were able to discuss this today. And of course, we will be back. So thank you, Alan, also for joining us. It's great to have you back. And I just want to add that Alan will be back in September. There is another topic, how to choose a clinic, that he will talk about. So you can already sign up to join us, of course. But next week, on Tuesday, we will also talk about hysteroscopy. So if this is something that you if you are looking for some answers on this topic, then you can join us on Tuesday at 7 p.m. UK time. We will have another speaker, another fertility expert. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Alan, it's been great to have you. It's been a great session indeed. I know we will see each other quite soon. So see you in September. Have a great summer. And thank you, everyone, for joining as always. Take care and have a good night. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.